Sam Cotton, theathletic.com. We'll ask Sam about this. I was going to mention the transfer portal change, and we will. Sam, good to have you. Thank you very much for your time anytime. What are your thoughts about another overseas would be 2 games in the Big 12 next year if it works out?
I think as long as it's in an exclusive television window where you're getting the benefit of having a captive audience, I think it's worthwhile. I agree with Craig on the fact that it's a shame that you lose a home game for this one of the schools involved because that's a payday. Also, I would assume they're probably getting compensated pretty significantly for this to make up for what they lose in home gate for it. But it's unfortunate for the fans. And to Craig's point earlier about trying to get more money and expand the sport and expand the scope, I get it. That's what I feel like for the last 30, 35 years, ever since we started seeing the major effects of conference realignment when the Southwest Conference broke up and the Big 12, and then when we saw the Pac-12 or Pac-10 almost fall apart, and then we've seen the SEC and all these other conferences expand. It's all about eyeballs and TV money and trying to get a bigger brand, and it does take a lot of time. And I don't love that that's the reason we're doing it. But if you get the exclusive window like Iowa State and Kansas State had, then I think there's a benefit to it because then the entire country gets to watch your product. And I think that's anytime the Big 12 can get everyone's eyes on their product, I think that's a positive for the conference.
Sam, the fans will be mad more than likely, but the stadium is not done either, and not until 27 completely. So I can kind of see where they're coming from, where they're like, well, let's just not have this headache with one of these games. And if we're going to travel like we did all of 2024, let's at least have some fun, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think that's a valid reason. And trying to do those facilities projects over the course of time and over the course of the season is really hard. I've covered games. I'm sure we all have covered games where you have the makeshift situation, and then you have some schools that play games in other venues. We know Kansas did that last year. So I think it's understandable. But again, losing a home game is never great because the schools are asking their fans to pay more and more every year for tickets, for season tickets, donations and all that. So what are you getting on the back end? What the fans are looking at is what does that home schedule look like? So how many games can I go to and what opponents are we going to see? And I think that matters in a big way.
So there is a massive set of games this weekend all across the country. It's a great slate. But one we were just talking about, a big one of the Big 12, Wyoming at Colorado. No, just kidding. Texas Tech at Utah. Man, the line of scrimmage battle alone, Utah's O-line versus Tech's D-line has been talked about quite a bit. The quarterback duel. Sam, what's on your mind when it comes to this game, and what are you expecting? What are you feeling, and how do you view it all?
Yeah, I think Utah having this game at home is certainly a plus. I think you'd almost like it if you're Utah if it would have been at night, just because I think playing Rice-Eccles at night is kind of hard. And so I think that would be even a bigger advantage if they could. But you love what you've seen from Utah offensively. Devin Dampier has been everything we thought he would be so far. The offensive line and those 2 tackles that they have that are projected to be first-round picks. Watching them go against David Bailey and Romello Height and the Tech D-line is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then on the other side, Tech really hasn't been tested yet, truly. They've played some opponents that have been pretty overmatched. I mean, even Oregon State, I thought, was fairly overmatched when they played them. So this is going to be really the first true test for this team. And what I'm looking for from Texas Tech is I feel like in the Joey McGuire era, they sometimes have a tendency to play like this. I feel like Joey McGuire, as we all know, is a very passionate guy, very emotional coach. And I think sometimes maybe the team matches that. And that you want to be kind of steady. You want to kind of be steady Eddie. And so I want to see if Tech can kind of play that way this year. And this is like the first test of that. It's like, okay, can you go match the energy? Can you go deal with adversity on the road because you're going to hit some this week? And how do you handle that? And how does the team handle that? But this is a big time game because this is for positioning in this conference. If you're going to be a playoff contender, this is a win to stamp on your resume for whichever team gets it. And it's a big noon kickoff, man. I love that we're kicking off Saturday this way.
Do you think either team has been tested? Because whatever Utah did to UCLA means nothing now, right after what we've seen from them?
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. Utah, I don't think has been tested quite as much either. But yeah, I think this is going to be the real first big test for both teams, and so I'm intrigued to see how it goes for both of them.
Sam Conn with us every Thursday at 3:30 on 365 Sports.
How does A&M's win over Notre Dame change the trajectory of their season if it does?
I mean, I don't really think you can say it does until we see them open the SEC play next week against Auburn. Because what if they lay an egg against Auburn at home next week? Then you've washed a lot of the goodwill away from that win. That's going to be the challenge, and I think Mike Elko talked about that this week. And how do they handle success? They didn't do a good job of it last year. They got to the 7-1 mark and then faltered down the stretch and really didn't handle it very well. That's what this year is going to have to be about for A&M is, can you avoid that letdown? Can you avoid making mistakes and playing the type of football that gets you into trouble where you're going to, I mean, this is an Auburn team that, by the way, beat them last year in 4 overtimes, if I remember correctly. So, and there's a lot more talent on this Auburn team, a lot better quarterback on this Auburn team than there was last year. So I think what the win does over Notre Dame is it opens the possibility that now you could be a playoff team. I think there was some of us that thought maybe they were a dark horse to consider if things broke right. Well, you get that first big win on the road against a really good program, and that opens that possibility. But there's a whole SEC schedule ahead and a lot of big games left. So really it comes down to, hey, do you take care of business out that next week?
I know we're going to talk about the transfer portal tweak, but what the transfer portal has done is it's created some matchups where guys face their old teams, and it's kind of cool when that happens. And you mentioned Auburn, Jackson Arnold in Norman this weekend. They've started off well, but OU has in their own right. What does this boil down to, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think to me, it's whether or not Auburn can make something happen against OU defensively. I think OU's been terrific on defense so far to start this year. And not that they played a bunch of juggernaut offenses or anything like that, but I thought they were really impressive against Michigan. And Brent Venables in big games, I think, has a history of being able to get guys corralled. And so when you think of a quarterback like Jackson Arnold, who played for him, he's going to know every tendency and what he can do and what his strengths and weaknesses are. I think that's a really big advantage for Venables as a defensive coordinator and as a head coach, because I think he's going to be able to draw something up. Now, Auburn, like I said, has a lot more talent than they did a year ago. Jackson Arnold's got Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman to throw to, which are two pretty dynamic weapons. And you guys saw it when they played Baylor, the way they utilize those guys, especially the way they utilize Singleton, motioning him on jet motion, throwing him in the backfield, throwing him all over the field. He's such a weapon because he's so dynamic as a athlete. I think that is if you're Auburn, you want to be able to run the ball and you want to be able to get the ball in his hands. I don't think this is a game where if you're Auburn that you run Jackson Arnold 20 times. I just don't think that's the winning formula for them. And on the other side, you're going to have to keep pace with an offense that's been pretty good. I think John Mateer has been what a lot of people thought so far. And can they keep that up against an SEC team, against what I think is shaping up to be a pretty solid SEC team? But and having that game at home, I think, is good too. There's a lot of emotions involved, obviously, for Jackson Arnold on that one, and so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think it's definitely a tall test for Auburn.
Sam, when I saw most coaches reacting to the one-time transfer portal now that early January that's proposed, I don't know if the Big Ten's in favor of it. I think they've kind of grumbled a little bit. SEC seems to be happy. I saw quotes in your story about it. What has been the overall reaction? And if it's good for the coaches and the programs, is this the first time that anyone's pushed back on what has been an open window for the players?
Yeah, I think the large takeaway from most people you talk to in the industry, coaches, GMs, personnel directors, like the elimination of the spring window. And going down to one portal window. The common sentiment that you hear is the NFL doesn't have 2 free agency periods. Why should we? And I think that's a fair assessment. However, there are some coaches who maybe would have liked it in the spring window. I think Jed Fish was one of those at Washington who said that he would have preferred it to be in the spring because he thought it would give him more of a chance to retain his players, but also because they're on a quarter system and they start school on January 5th. And if you're opening the portal on January 2nd, how do you get guys in class quickly enough? And so I understand that. But I even have talked to coaches who have said, hey, if you're a first-time head coach and you got here and a bunch of players left, you use that spring portal window to help backfill your roster for all the attrition you lost. Certainly you're going to use the winter for that as well, but doing it in the winter only does create a little bit of a challenge. So I think there has been some pushback on it. And Ryan Day, of course, bringing up the point that if you're in the college football playoff, 4 teams are still competing if that portal window is open in January 2nd, and it's going to be tough on them. I understand that. I think that's fair. But, I listen to Brian Kelly and Steve Sarkisian both say, hey, that's a good problem to have. If that is the biggest problem you have when you're in the semifinals playing for national championship, that's a better place to be than if you're a team that's had a fired coach or that you've had 40-year players leave. And so because we have so many large personnel staffs, you got GMs, you got scouting directors, you got personnel directors, they could probably figure it out. There's no perfect place to put it because the season used to be a 1-semester sport, and now it's a 2-semester sport because we play the playoff into January. And as long as that happens, there's no perfect date for a portal window, in my opinion.
Sam, that argument reminds me of something, and Smokey will remember this. They when they announced the very first time of the winter signing day, of the December signing day, the first one was like December 21st or something like that, which would have put it in state championship week in Texas high school football. And my 2 co-hosts, one of whom is sitting to the right of me and one who is watching from above, Butch Henry, we miss him dearly, said, well, all these coaches in Texas are going to be furious about that. I said, you know what? Like 49 other states aren't going to give a crap because they've been done for 2 weeks. So when Ryan Day is like, hey, I could have to do this, they're like, shut up. You're the national champion. We're trying to end a headache. I don't care. So like the coaches in like all these other states are going to be like, I don't care. So it's the the kind of thing. Anybody the minority who's affected the least will always be the angriest for whatever reason. Right.
No doubt. And Craig Bowl, the director of the AFCA, we talked about this in the summer when he was at the Texas High School Coaches Convention. And he acknowledged, look, there's no perfect date. It's hard to do. And I asked, did you guys consider making the one window the spring? And he said they did talk about that, but the overriding concern from coaches was as soon as the season is over, if a player knows he's leaving, what does he do? So you're going to have him just hang around for the whole semester and he's not part of the team, but he's in school. So he's not working out with the team and he's got to figure that out. And the numbers show that most players leave in the winter. There were more than 3,000 FBS scholarship players in the portal last year. About more than almost 2/3 of them, around 63-64% of them got in the portal in the winter window. Only about 35-36% got in the spring. So the winter seems to be more aligned with the player movement because you had 2 windows and most players took advantage of the winter for multiple reasons, to get into their new schools and get in January and be a part of spring practice and all that stuff. So that just seemed to be the natural place where it fell based on the most movement. And honestly, and I'll say this as someone who covers the roster movement, a lot of the players moving in the spring, there's the Nico Yamaliava, of course, but there's not very many impact players moving in the spring. There are some. Jay Knott was one of them. Nico was one of them. There's a few, but there's not a ton of impact players moving in the spring. So I understand why having it in the winter makes more sense. And I agree with you, Paul. It's like, it's not going to work for everybody. So let's make it to where it inconveniences the fewest amount of people. And if the programs you're inconveniencing are the ones playing for national championship, I think that's not too bad of a place to land.
I know you've got to look at it from, hey, it's your job and it's part of the deal is covering the transfer portal. But like when you take the working cap off and it's just Sam, like free time Sam, how much do you love the one transfer portal window?
I love it. Oh my gosh. Because I also love that it's not in December now. So you remember a couple of years ago, we had signing day in the middle of December, the portal open in the middle of December, coaching carousel in the middle of December. Well, now we've moved signing day into early December. It's right before conference championship week. So that part is taken care of. Now you're moving the portal window into January. And now you're making December dead. So nobody's visiting in December. I guess one thing I'm going to have to check on is how does that work for guys who are in the portal for coaching changes? Because you're going to still have the 30-day window for guys who change coaches. which there's going to be a lot of those in November and December. So I'll be curious to see how the visits work for those guys. But supposedly, as part of this proposal, it's going to turn December into a dead period, which means no visits. I know the coach are going to love that. But for me personally, yeah, restricting or constricting the movement to one window as opposed to 20 days or 30 days or 45 days, it makes it a lot easier to get your mind wrapped around. And it also allows you to kind of focus on the football, because last year I was trying to, and nobody cry river for me. I mean, I love my job, but trying to keep track of the playoff and the portal and player movement at the same time was really challenging. And so I can only, if it was challenging for me to keep track of, I can only imagine how difficult it was for coaches and staffs to try to do this, and players to try to also move at this time. We know the stories of players, Bo Pribula, Malik Murphy, guys who had to leave their playoff teams to go get in the portal to go find their next situation. It's good for these players now that most of them will not be forced to make that decision anymore. Now we're only talking about players on 4 teams who will be forced to make those decisions. So, but as for me, yes, I love it, because now, hey, I can actually pay attention to signing day now, because I feel like that's kind of got lost by the wayside the last few years. I haven't really paid much attention to high school signing day because the portal window was right on the heels of that, and we're gearing up for that. So now signing day has its own time. The portal has its own time, and I think it'll work out a little bit more smoothly and easier to consume for everybody who follows the sport.
Sam, if cost of living out of it, I'm hiring Sam Khan as my head coach, and I've given him offers at Virginia Tech and UCLA. Which one would have to pay you more to come and rebuild their program?
Ooh, good question. Probably Virginia Tech. And the reason I say that is this: I know how bad the situation is from a fan standpoint and interest in UCLA, but in my belief in taking jobs, head coaching jobs, take the job where the players are, and you can get easier access to players in California than you can in Virginia. Certainly in Virginia, you have access to some hotbeds. You can get into the South. Maybe you can get up the East Coast a little bit, but that job has been down for a little while too. UCLA, even though I know they're not a traditionally great program, they got USC in the backyard and you got everybody else recruiting the state of California. If you're in driving distance of a lot of players, you can rebuild that program pretty quickly. And, oh, by the way, you can sell people on, hey, come to LA and come play for me. I think what that program has suffered from in a large way is I just don't think they've made good coaching hires. Deshaun Foster was not a good coaching hire. Chip Kelly clearly lost interest and it turned out not to be the hire they thought he was. I mean, Jim Moore, I think when they had him, he was okay, but they didn't really do a ton there. They really haven't had a dynamite coach go in there. And I don't know how much of that is just administration. How much of that is there not that much interest in that job? I don't know. But I feel like when you got proximity to players, and if you have the money, that's the other question about is, does UCLA have the money to go get players? But if you have access to talent, that is a built-in advantage that always helps. If you're close to players and you can get players, then that helps, and that's a good foundation to start off. So you gave me the choice of those 2 jobs. I take UCLA.
You are a University of Houston grad, covered them heavily, still do. How about, I know Colorado is kind of right now to be determined, but to win that game, to have a big moment at home, your thoughts about Willie Fritz? We had him on Monday's show, kind of like chopping wood and business as usual.
Yeah, not surprised in the least. I mean, we all know Willie Fritz's track record. You look at it up and down at every level he's been, he's won. Every program he's been at, he's built them up into a winner. And so I expect nothing less at Houston. I think that's going to happen. I think when he got the job, my guess was within 4 years he would turn them into a Big 12 title contender. I still believe that. I'm not ready to say yet at 3-0 that this is the team that's going to be a Big 12 title contender. After what I was there on Friday night, I saw that game in person. I still think there's some steps to take, but there's a lot of good there. Connor Wegman looks rejuvenated. He looks a little bit like the guy that I remember coming out of Bridgeland High School 3 years ago. He's got some juice. He's got some confidence. They've got some really good skill talent. They really replenished that offensive roster pretty well they really had nowhere to go but up after being second to last in the country last year in scoring. But they've done a good job. They've got a really solid roster. The really good defense still. They play hard. They play disciplined. They don't really beat themselves very much. And that's all recipe for winning. So I think they're a factor. I think they're a bowl team this year. Wouldn't surprise me if they're a 7-5 team. I think if you can push to 8, that's a really good year for Houston. But just making the postseason and taking a step forward, I think is good for them, and I think Willie will get them there.
Sam Cotton, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, young man. Appreciate it. Are you going to be at a game this weekend, or are you going to be kind of watching from afar?
I will be at home watching everything. I will probably be at a game next weekend. So,
all right, buddy. Good to see you. Thank you very much, Sam Cotton, with us on 365 Sports most every Thursday